Good evening, everyone. The Overlord here. As you all know, we are in the era of the next generation consoles. In this era, there are three main consoles sweeping the market: the Nintendo Wii, the Xbox 360, and the PlayStation 3. However, it seems as if this new generation of consoles has brought something else along with it besides new games. And that's the consoles war. Perhaps the dumbest war I've ever seen in my life. And we have all these fanboys for each side claiming that this console kicks all other consoles' asses, or that this one particular console sucks for specific reasons. Well, let me say something that may shock all the fanboys and haters of specific consoles out there. Each console has its own pros and cons. In the next generation of consoles, each console has its strong points as well as its weak points. And I think it's about time we discuss this a little bit and finally put this retarded war behind us. Now, the first system I'm going to bring up is the Nintendo Wii. I'm going to start by talking about the controllers, the Wiimote, and the nunchuck. This is what makes the Wii so interesting in the market, since it offers motion-sensitive controls where you actually have to move the controllers in order to play the games. This is somewhat like the Power Glove for the NES, but it's far more responsive and you have more control over what you do, as long as you have games that actually have decent controls, that is. That being said, we see one of the strong points about the Wii, the motion-sensitive controls. That's great and definitely innovated. Now how about some fucking games? As great as the controls are, gamers don't buy consoles for the controls alone. We buy consoles for the games that are on it. And in my opinion, there are not that many great games on the Wii. Yes, we have Twilight Princess, Mario Galaxy, Metroid Prime 3, and others. But how many good games are really out for the Wii? Especially when you compare them with the number of mediocre to shit games that have been produced on it. For those of you not fully grasping what I'm talking about, let me put it in perspective. Most games produced for a system are not what would be considered great or worth buying. I'd say that, on average, only 20 to 25% of the games made for a system are worth forking over the $50 to play. That being said, the Wii probably has about 10% of their games worth buying, and trust me, this is not nearly enough. And while we're at it, start producing more mature games. Let's face it, many of the games for the Wii are very childish and don't offer much for mature gamers such as myself who enjoy first-person shooters and games where you expect to see some real action. There are some games on the Wii that do have mature action, but I can only think of a small handful of them that are actually good. Besides, many of those from the Nintendo fanbase became hooked on games during the time of the NES. And now, almost 20 years later, we become more mature gamers and want to broaden our horizons. Platformers are nice and all, but I would like to see more games with some action. Next, I'd like to bring up the Xbox 360. I personally think this system is really good. Many of the games have online compatibility, which is a great thing. I mean, who doesn't want to play against a bunch of people who are just as good at the game you're playing as you, if not more so? As a very competitive person, this is something I like seeing, because it gives me a chance to improve myself after I've beaten the games on their hardest levels. The 360 also has been around long enough to have many good games on its system. I mean, who doesn't like playing games like Dead Rising and Turok? True, there are plenty of shit games on it as well, but I'd say that the ratio between good and bad games is pretty fair. And seeing that Microsoft leans towards mature games, this system is appealing towards mature gamers such as myself. Now, that being said, there is something that I have to bring up, possibly the biggest problem with the Xbox 360. That would be the infamous Red Ring of Death. Now, I can understand a gaming system reaching the end of its life, but the Xbox 360's life expectancy is so short that it's pathetic. For those wondering how long the life expectancy of an Xbox 360 is, it's only about 3 years. And most of the systems don't make it that long. Hell, many of them only last about a year or less before the Red Ring of Death appears and kills your 360. True, Microsoft understands this problem and is willing to replace your system with a new one if your current one should die. But this is still problematic as hell. Mainly because you'll have to be offline from your Xbox for 2 to 3 weeks while Microsoft goes through the trouble of replacing it. As convenient and generous as Microsoft is being for doing this, it still sucks that we have to actually go through this. You'd think it would be easier for Microsoft to make the system so that they don't end up dying on you within 3 years' time. This is what's known as quality control. And let me say that this is some of the worst quality control I've ever seen for a video gaming console. And now we come to our next console, the PS3. This is perhaps the most overhated system among the next generation consoles. Many people will claim that the system doesn't have enough games, or that the price is too high, or that it has more unnecessary add-ons than a card during the after segments of shows like Pimp My Ride. But the truth is that this console gets far too much negative criticism than it deserves. It's getting good games on it, and I will admit that the add-ons were trouble for me at first, mainly due to the fact that it seemed to do nothing more than surge the price of the system up. But now the price isn't as high as it used to be. True, it is the most expensive console on the market right now, at a price of $400, but that's not so bad when you consider the fact that the Xbox 360's price tag is $350. Now you're probably wondering what the cons of this system are. Truth be told, I don't really know. I don't own one, and I don't know anyone who has one. Yes, I could go on the fact that it's the most expensive gaming system on the market, but that's really unfair to some degree. I'd say the biggest problem was the way it was introduced in the market. Yes, this is considered reaching to some extent, but I haven't been able to get what I would consider unbiased or current criticism, and believe me when I say that I tried. Now, like I was saying, the first impression that this console got was rather lousy. With an unbelievable price tag of $600, no vibration in the controls, no tilt, a lack of good games on opening day, and random problems everywhere, this system's first impression is probably its biggest fault. Like I said, many of the problems were fixed, but many people are still talking about the PS3 as if it hasn't changed a bit, and this is where the problem lies with it. Due to its poor introduction to the market and lack of games to begin with, Sony is down $3 billion, and unless they can start doing more to encourage gamers to buy the PS3, I'm really worried that Sony might be done with in the competitive gaming business. Well, that's what I have to say about the game consoles. True, I could have gone further in depth with each one and give them more detailed positive and negatives, but I don't want this rant to go on forever. Besides, we haven't even touched on the biggest problem with the console war, the thing that shows you just how retarded it is. The fanboys. And I'll be getting to them in my next rant. Well, that's all I have to say right now. Good fucking night.